Gameplan.com, where football makes sense. I'm Memory Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Bring you our 2013 preseason All-ACC team. So let's start this video off by naming the starting quarterback on our list.
Taj Boyd is our starting quarterback on our preseason All-ACC team. This is a guy that should have an outstanding senior campaign for the Clemson Tigers and could garner some Heisman Trophy consideration. Showing good power inside, Jerome Smith earns a starting spot on our preseason All-Conference list. 6 feet, 217 pounds, went over 1,000 yards last season for the Orange. And we look at Duke Johnson and what he was able to do as a true freshman for that Miami football team. You have to be excited about his potential moving forward. Here's a guy that can catch the football out of the backfield, do a lot of damage on a return game, and also shows the natural fluidness of a runner that you want starting in your backfield. Sammy Watkins is one of the more explosive playmakers in the country. Whether it be as a guy that can play outside on the split or in the slot or as a returner or even in the backfield, Watkins will find his way to the end zone. I'm a big fan of Alex Amadon and what he brings to the table. 5'11", 186 pounds. Look at last season, went over 1,200 yards receiving at a whopping 15.5 yards a catch and 7 touchdowns for the Boston College Eagles. Another one of these new age tight ends, Eric Ebron of North Carolina, 6'4", 245 pounds, should have an outstanding campaign this season and is already on the radar of NFL scouts as one of the top tight end prospects this year. There's a reason why Clemson's offense is explosive. You look at that offensive line, and the key part of that O-line is Brandon Thomas, 6'3", 307, can play guard or tackle. And we look at Florida State's interior offensive line, Trey Jackson, a guy that's been a star since day one, 6'4", 327 pounds, should have an All-American campaign this year, as well as his teammate, Brian Stork, who was a second-team All-ACC selection last year, as well as a freshman All-American during his first year at Florida State. And we look at the other side of the offensive line, Tyler Shatley of Clemson, another interior offensive lineman. Their guard play is vital to their offense, and they have 2 good ones on the inside. And rounding out the top 5, the offensive lineman, James Hurst of North Carolina, 6'7", 305, another one of these Tar Heels that is on the radar of NFL scouts as one of the premier prospects in the land. Stephon Diggs burst onto the scene as a true freshman for the Maryland Terrapins. You look at a guy that had almost 900 yards receiving, 25.8 yards a kickoff return, and also 10 yards per punt return. Definitely one of the more multifaceted players in the country. Defensive end James Gale of the Virginia Tech Hokies does a great job against run, 43 tackles last year, and also showed some pass rushing ability by totaling 5 sacks on the season. Florida State defensive tackle Tim Jernigan makes our list as a guy that could have played back in the day when Florida State had first-round picks along that defensive front. Definitely a terror that lives in the backfield. Last year had 6.5 TFLs. And speaking of tackle for losses, you look at Aaron Donald and what he did last year for the Pitt Panthers, 6 feet, 275. Utilizes his quickness right off the snap and led the league in TFLs with 13. And rounding out our defensive line, you look at North Carolina's defensive end, Kareem Martin, who utilizes his speed and athleticism to rack up 11.5 TFLs and 4 sacks. I have Georgia Tech's Jeremiah Attitude listed as a linebacker due to the fact that he's played that over the course of his career for the Yellow Jackets. This year, his production should go up as he moves down to the defensive end position. You want to talk about a physical specimen, you look at the 6'4", 232-pound linebacker Christian Jones out of Florida State, was the team's leading tackler last season with 93. And linebacker Jack Tyler is another guy that led his team in tackles last season, over 115, 10.5 TFLs. That speed and athleticism is also effective on blitzes. Cornerback Ross Cockrell from Duke is another guy that's on the radar for NFL scouts. When you look at his technique, you see a guy that uses his hands very well and gets in position to make a play on the ball. That's all you can ask from a corner. LaMarcus Joyner was a highly touted recruit coming into Florida State and has lived up to the billing, making multiple All-ACC squads throughout the course of his career, and was also a freshman first-team All-American. Pitt free safety Jason Hendricks was a guy that showed tremendous range from sideline to sideline last year, was all over the football field, racking up 6 interceptions for the Panthers. A.J. Marshall out of Wake Forest is of the same caliber of Jason Hendricks out of Pitt, but this is another player that's very rangy, very fast, and also has the ball skills that you want roaming the back end of your secondary. Chandler Catanzaro has gotten better each and every year for the Clemson Tigers. Last year connected on 18 of 19 field goals, including a game winner versus LSU in the Chick-fil-A Bowl. Last year, Will Mundy was also voted first-team All-ACC after averaging 44.5 yards a punt for the Duke Blue Devils, and is definitely one of the better punters in the ACC. We've talked about him before, but Stephon Diggs definitely makes our list as our starting kickoff returner. Brought back 2 kickoffs for touchdowns last season and averaged 25.8 yards a return. I'm a big fan of Rashad Green as my punt returner because he shows the necessary agility needed to make people miss and also has the skill set to bring it back to the house. Look at our second team preseason All-ACC offense. Some great names on this list. Guys like James Wilder Jr. will have a breakout campaign this year as a junior. You also look at Michael Campanaro out of Wake Forest, one of the more complete wide receivers in the country. And you finally started to see Centrell Henderson grow into that player that we expected him to be coming out of high school for Miami. 6'8", 345-pound senior should blossom even more so in his final season. Now let's move over to our second team defensive preseason All-ACC team, and let's look in the secondary. 2 guys out of Virginia, one from Virginia Tech, and Anton Exum, who's 6'1", 224 pounds, big corner, and Demetrius Nicholson out of Virginia. Here's a guy that's a junior, and it seems like each and every year there's a top quality cornerback coming out of Virginia. You also look down on the line of scrimmage, Art Norman out of North Carolina State, a guy, despite his size, is always involved in big plays.